Hello, and welcome to episode 5 of Ignite Fighting Fascism in the Age of Its Rise. I really wanted this entire experience to be about teaching how to resist, teaching how to be a better citizen. But I also found myself really learning a lot as well. And to that end, I just wanted to thank you for listening to this podcast because it has given me the opportunity to learn about podcasting, about reaching a different community, about sort of gathering my thoughts in this era that we're in, and it's really allowed me to challenge myself and push myself to new heights. And so that would not be happening without you listening to this podcast because it gives me that extra little motivation to keep going. So before we get into episode 5, I do want to say thank you. And just I really appreciate it. Chapter 5 of Ignite is quite timely because, as you know, in chapter 4, we spent quite a bit of time talking about mental health and mental wellness. Well, prior to writing chapter 5, I had the fortune of getting to spend some time with my family on Hawaii, going on a special trip. And it was both relaxing and challenging, but really that surfaced a lesson that really, propelled this chapter. So let's get into it. Chapter 5. Don't touch the turtles. Just over 7 months into the 47th president's administration, what could likely be the last free and fair elections, I realized how exhausted I had become. Working 10 to 12-hour shifts, sometimes 7 days a week, while fighting fascism, producing content, and building an activist community on Rebel Radio, well, that had all taken its toll. The constant onslaught of authoritarian advancement was wearing me down, both physically and mentally. I knew that I needed to stop. I knew I needed to step away. And with every fiber of my being, I resisted that idea. Because of that, I'd made, the difficult decision to step away from the show and creation of the content for a week to travel. I was very fortunate to have received a Christmas gift from my in laws for a trip to Hawaii. And I want to be very clear that under normal circumstances, given the state of our country and the economy, I both recognize how fortunate I was, but I also want to be, very clear that without their help, this would not have been possible. But as with many things in the work of fighting fascism, everything seemed to really happen for a reason, perhaps by accident, or perhaps by some design I don't yet understand. As a result of this travel, I was unable to consistently connect to my phone. This was both a blessing and a curse. While it meant I couldn't stay current with the latest authoritarian advances in the United States, it also meant that I could truly disconnect from the inherent social media bubbles I had created that had become part of my daily routine. So, the first lesson of this chapter, if I have not made it clear enough, you must step away. You must disconnect and examine what media circles you find yourself trapped within. Algorithms have created information bubbles of self reinforcement that allow you to believe only certain things, the things that the algorithm wants to show you. These systems reinforce your existing beliefs in ways that are not easy to get out of, and they are designed specifically to maximize your screen time and to ensure maximizing advertising revenue. This does not necessarily mean the information you're receiving is the most truthful or representative of your community or your country's actual state. I was blindsided by my own algorithm in the 2024 election. TikTok specifically had led me down an information rabbit hole that left me feeling that while the election would be close, enough momentum had been built among current voters that there was a strong chance the candidate I supported, the one not actively advancing authoritarianism, would win. I was wrong. After the events in Pennsylvania, I saw momentum building behind the would be president that seemed unstoppable. Nonetheless, I chose to invest in hope. Some tell me that this is delusional, and if I'm being honest with you, sometimes hope does feel a bit delusional. But there are days when I kind of think they might be right. Investing in hope can create an inherent weakness when you're fighting on an uneven playing field. Hope can be weaponized against you. And indeed, hope was used as a weapon against the American electorate. Many people simply hoped that enough of their fellow Americans would vote to keep authoritarianism at bay. and many simply sat out and did not vote. I had to step away from these digital echo chambers and acknowledge the stress they were and still do cause me. The long hours I worked to create the content and maintain messaging on multiple platforms, and these platforms increasingly censoring the kind of content I produced, was taking a physical toll on me. It also meant taking time away from my job. And by the way, I don't have the kind of job where you have vacation time. So I literally had to sort of pay for my own time off. A lot of Americans are in this exact situation, and that added a lot of financial stress and strain to my already overwhelming situation. I very much recognize and empathize that a lot of people in this country simply cannot take even a week off to spend with their family. And by the way, did I mention that I hate flying? Let me say that it took a considerable amount of time for me to settle into the paradise that is Hawaii. The constant routine disruptions were particularly challenging for me as an autistic individual, and that made it a lot harder for me to adjust to the new environment. I kind of feel guilty with my family when I have that trouble adjusting, but I'm starting to learn that I shouldn't. Try telling that to my brain. And of course, I was very grateful to have this time away. The constant onslaught of authoritarian advancement remained in my mind while I was traveling, and it was difficult to dismiss and completely walk away from that. My wife would occasionally show me significant and frightening stories from, for example, the New York Times, and that did make it harder for me to disconnect. But I did disconnect all the same. Speaking of disconnect and speaking about learning podcasting, just about this time of the recording, I recognized that I was not using my microphone. It was not actually plugged in. So all the audio you got in the previous section was actually right from my computer. We'll see how that turns out. See if I can tweak that in the background. Now that we're rolling with the correct microphone, let's get back to episode 5. Episode 5, I think, really comes down to this part. The quest for turtles. We had decided that one of our missions on this trip would be to see a sea turtle. Boy, say that twice. They seem nearly impossible to accomplish this goal without spending money on tourist trips or excursions that typically show you these animals. But we began our quest to find the perfect beach by employing the next crucial lesson of episode 5. Ask for help. We could have certainly paid to go on a tour to see turtles, and I'm sure that we would have seen them. However, finding turtles throughout commercialized tourism didn't really align with our values, so we went on a quest to find them ourselves. Eventually, we found a very talkative taxi driver who directed us to Baldwin Beach State Park in Maui. And this is where the next lesson became clear. I had been struggling with discomfort through this trip, understanding that much of it resulted from my aversion to change as an autistic individual. To put it bluntly, there was plenty of times that I was not the best traveler. When we arrived at Baldwin Beach with my family, I knew I had to disconnect from that discomfort. We are not going to have another experience like that as a family again, and I knew that I had to choose them instead of my comfort. And so, to their great shock, I took my shoes off and I began walking in the sand. And that was really liberating and freeing. It was a reminder to me that with great discomfort comes great reward. And we all find ourselves in situations where we must push beyond our comfort zones. Most Americans right now are not lifting their heads to see the oncoming rush of fascism because they choose instead to stay comfortable. Now, that comfort might be their job, or their family, or their home, or their political status, or simply not knowing what to do. But it is comfort nonetheless, which prevents them from taking to the streets, taking action, calling representatives, or really causing any disruption that might slow the advance of authoritarianism. Now, I don't mean to get too philosophical here, but if I can take my shoes off on the beach, you can do something too. You can do something. So, as we were walking along this beach, it felt like a normal, entertaining beach trip. The water was rushing over our feet, and that really helped me with my anxiety about the situation. I was focusing on the moment, taking in this amazing and beautiful beach. By the way, great beach, really easy to get to, highly recommended. I saw people with dogs, kids playing in the sand, swimming in the ocean, and it wasn't lost on me how many people grow up in places like this that are fundamentally changed by that experience, just so connected to nature and to beauty. And for the first time in quite a while, I truly felt disconnected from what was happening in the United States. I felt guilty about it then, and honestly, I still do feel a bit guilty, but it was essential. And I have to push myself, just like taking my shoes off on that beach. I have to push myself to take rest, to take breaks, and to remind others to do the same. As the wind picked up and the temperature rose, we took one more walk along the beach, somewhat determined that it was time to pack up and go. We were looking for a quick spot to lay our beach towel and observe the ocean when I suddenly came upon what I thought was a giant rock. But it wasn't a rock at all. It was a massive sea turtle that felt like it was the size of a car. I had never seen something so alive and large and unexpected all in one place. And when I tell you that it was larger than my 13-year-old son, I am not exaggerating. The point here is if I had not tried to do what we were doing, I would not have accomplished what we were trying to accomplish. We have to try to beat fascism. Someone has to try. The problem we're facing right now is that too many people are waiting for someone else. I couldn't wait for someone to find me those turtles. They found me. You, similarly, cannot wait for someone to find you and tell you it's time to go. You have to go, and you have to go sooner than you're ready. So, I do have some lessons from the turtle. The next lesson about authoritarianism came from watching these magnificent creatures. Sea turtles on land, especially on the sandy and rocky beaches of Hawaii, are at their most vulnerable. They are considerably heavy creatures, and their bodies are not designed for quick transportation in this environment. Technically, this makes them somewhat defenseless. Similarly, if you're fighting authoritarianism during its rise, you're going to try to fight back against a force that is approaching its most powerful. To be super clear, we are nowhere near as close to the authoritarianism peaking in the United States. There is much farther to go. And you, just like that turtle, find yourself in an environment that is openly hostile to you. Some of us experience more hostility on more fronts than others, but everyone fighting fascism and anyone who doesn't expressly agree with authoritarianism is, by definition, vulnerable. Sea turtles come out to the beach, they've come onto the beach for a number of reasons. Some of that is to reproduce, some of that is for rest or to find food. And it has to understand its environment and use it to its advantage. The sea turtle rests on the beach using the protection of its own shell. Your shell can be many things: experience, trauma, courage, education, this podcast. Protecting yourself is important. Indeed, it has never been as important to protect yourself in your lifetime. But when it's time for the turtle to return to the sea, it uses its most powerful weapon, the sea itself. When resting, a sea turtle waits for the feeling of waves crashing upon its lower extremities. When it feels the waves crashing on its body, it knows it's time to position itself. It waits until the waves begin to move it from side to side or back and forth. Then the turtle begins to move slowly but purposefully along the sand, using its flippers to reposition itself and allow the water to encircle and surround it. Eventually, when the water does exactly that, the water, its most comfortable environment, pushes the turtle up and down, side to side, and the turtle that had once become immobilized is now buoyant. That buoyancy, that ability to flow within the water, is now a massive strength. As more water surrounds the turtle and buoyancy increases, it becomes better positioned to move around and it launches back into the sea. Once the turtle is totally surrounded by water, an animal that was once cumbersome and awkward becomes able to quickly and sort of amazingly so move throughout the ocean. And so the lesson is a turtle on land versus a turtle fully surrounded by water is an entirely different animal. It's magical to watch. During my time there, I witnessed this transformation many times. I watched turtles pick themselves up slowly and cumbersomely and move from hostile territory, using everything in their power to change their circumstances. Once fully in the water, they transform themselves from cumbersome and slow creatures into something majestic, fast, and, to some things, dangerous. The lesson I hope I'm imparting is this: you have to learn to use your surroundings and your strengths. You have to learn to use the things that make you powerful exactly when you need them. You have to protect yourself from this authoritarian regime and stay vigilant at all times. You cannot wait when the water comes to your feet, metaphorically. You have to be able and be ready to go. You can use that water, or in our case, the systems themselves, to your advantage and to become a more effective challenger to the authoritarianism that seeks to control us all. As simply and clearly as I can say it, we have to use the system against itself to push back and challenge authoritarianism. I'm going to teach you how to do that. It's not going to come in big steps always. Sometimes it will be very small, incremental actions. But this was not the only lesson that I would learn in Hawaii. And it wasn't the only lesson that I would learn from these magnificent creatures. The second lesson came at Richardson's Park in Hilo. Finding sea turtles had become somewhat of a quest for our family, and we were getting better at it every single time. One of the ways we talked about earlier was by asking people. And it's a good reminder, you don't have to have all of the answers. Learn to ask, open up, and be vulnerable, and people will help you. As you learn how to do this work, you will get better at it, just like we got better at finding turtles. People did help us find the best place to go. It didn't cost anything. And honestly, I'm quite aware that we probably had better access because people that were familiar with this area, with these creatures, were giving us better advice and not trying to charge us money. Both times in Hilo and at Richardson State Park, there were turtles right in front of me that I didn't notice until someone helped me find them. Once again, this time, quite by accident, while walking back to the park, we encountered a small enclave, a sort of micro harbor within the beach where there were nearly 10 sea turtles. As we began to notice these creatures, other people saw them too, and they did what human beings naturally do. They congregated towards the turtles. Sea turtles are a protected and endangered species. They are afforded protections by both state and federal law. Not everybody knows this, and a growing crowd of curious tourists from around the world began encircling the turtles, getting closer and closer. While my family knew what to do and to stay 10 feet away from them, most people were not following the rules. And among the chaos of people excited to see and photograph the turtles, I heard a small voice in the background. It was very small at first, but it got louder, and it got louder, and it got more frequent. Eventually, it became clear when I looked up. I saw a boy, no more than 9 or 10 years old, and he was screaming to the crowd. "You're too close to the turtles. Don't touch the turtles. You're too close to the turtles." He kept trying to scream louder and louder, but his screams went unheeded. We live in a time that is essentially lawless, when the authoritarian decides what's legal based on his preferences. That young boy was doing everything right. 99% of people wouldn't have the courage to do what he did by calling those people out. But just like we find ourselves now, it was unsuccessful, precisely because people chose to ignore it. Authoritarianism advances because they know that no one will stop them. when people brazenly witness this kind of violence and lawlessness, the natural outcome is more lawlessness and violence, and fewer people willing to exercise the courage that boy demonstrated on the beach that day. However, I do have to impart a final lesson on this chapter, on this episode. Standing around and screaming is not enough. Protesting is not enough. Calling your congressional representative is not enough. The fundamental models we've taught ourselves for protesting and fighting fascism are not working. The state is the only entity which is able to exercise violence. Authoritarians can constantly cause chaos, trauma, and damage without accountability. Those of us fighting fascism have to be right every single time. They, the fascists, only have to be right occasionally, and the goalposts keep moving farther and farther away. We can no longer stand on the sidelines like that boy on the beach. We have to become the disruption by fundamentally changing the model. We have to fundamentally revisit and reintroduce the concept of societal shame. It needs to be socially unacceptable to do harmful things. We need to reintroduce social morality. And we can do it in 1,000 different ways. And that's exactly what we're going to continue to teach you during and throughout this book. So if you take nothing else from this episode, please understand this. You can be both simultaneously proud of that young man screaming at the tourists at the top of his lungs to stop harming the turtles. You can recognize he was doing the right thing, and you can be proud of him. And you can also acknowledge that he accomplished fundamentally nothing. As I walked back to our vehicle, I saw him talking to his dad, who was really honestly doing an amazing job helping his young son understand what was happening. His father said audibly something that I heard and resonated. He said, "Sometimes, even when you do the right thing, the world is full of injustice." I'm not joking. I'm not being hyperbolic. That's what he said to his son. That is a great dad. What a powerful lesson to teach a child. I hope you resonate with that lesson as well. The fact that bad things are happening all around us, and that many of those bad things continue unabated, doesn't mean that they're still not bad and horrible. It doesn't mean we can't witness, document, and account for them. But it also means we have to adapt if we're going to survive. We have to find ways to stop people from touching the metaphorical turtles. And we have to find ways to continue protecting those who are most disadvantaged. Just like the turtle that feels the wave at its feet, we must recognize our opportunities and use our environment to our advantage. The time, my friends, for comfortable resistance is over. The time for incremental change through traditional channels has passed. We must be willing to step into the uncomfortable space where real change happens, where we use every single tool at our disposal, including the very system itself, to fight back against the rising tide of authoritarianism. Your comfort zone is not where democracy will be saved. Your comfort zone is where it goes to die. The waves are at our feet, my friends. It's time to move. Hello, and welcome to the extended session of Ignite, Fighting Fascism in the Age of Its Rise. I did not record this podcast or the extended session live today because today was a profound moment in American history. It's September 10th, 2025, and 31-year-old Charlie Kirk was shot today while speaking at a college campus in Utah. This day has been honestly shocking. And I haven't really had time to process everything. And I had taken a day off because I was getting ready to record this show today and do quite a few other things. But I found myself really just frozen today, as I think a lot of people are frozen because we are seeing now in real time what is happening to this country. And it almost feels like it feels like fiction happening in real time. I even debated whether I would record an extended session, but it's very clear that today is a historic day and is some kind of pivot in our course and in our direction for America. I don't know what that pivot is going to be or what is going to look like, but that largely depends on the work that we do, that all of us do, to try to make this country a better and safer place. And because the tone of Chapter 5, Episode 5, is rooted in the idea that our old ways of fighting fascism are not working, it is more appropriate than ever for me to be very clear about our mission and be very clear about the fundamentals of this book. While I, of course, don't believe that traditional protesting is going to stop this, I have to be absolutely clear. Violence is not the answer. It's not justified, and it's the antithesis of everything that we're fighting for. We talk about disruption. What does that mean? Disruption means creating resistance, civil, legal disobedience, and using the system against itself. We're talking about things like social pressure, economic action, legal resistance, community organizing, and cultural change. I I don't have the words to share about this event today. I wanted to, but it's not going to do you any justice to hear my thoughts right now. I can say that I'm kind of stunned and kind of shocked. And what is very clear is this country is on the wrong path. The waves are still at our feet. Remember the turtle metaphor from episode 5? The turtle does not become violent when it's vulnerable on the beach. It waits for the waves, it uses the water's power, and it transforms itself from an awkward creature into something graceful. Today, in the waves of what is sort of national shock, the waves of grief, anger, and fear are at our feet. And we can use that to do a few things: to recommit to nonviolent resistance, to practice and protect democratic institutions, to support people who are truly shocked by what's happening right now. If there is any one particular point of advocacy and activism that I have most identified with in my entire life, it has been your right to use your voice to challenge and to express your concerns to your government. The First Amendment right that you have is the First Amendment for a reason. I'm not going to provide commentary about Charlie Kirk because that is not what the purpose of this podcast is. And it is not lost on me that this moment makes us all less safe. It makes this country less safe. And it does not accomplish anything other than add further chaos into an already chaotic situation. The waves are at our feet, my friends. Waves of opportunity to recommit to our values, to protect each other, and to build the kind of country we want to live in. Take your shoes off, feel the sand, remember what it is that we're fighting for. Fighting for a world where everyone can speak their truth and go home safely at the end of the day. That is what democracy looks like. That is worth preserving. That's why we keep going, and we must keep going. One of the things that can happen with events and times like today is that movements like ours can dissipate. They can disappear. The world and this country is becoming a very scary place, which is why community matters more now than it ever has mattered. Thank you very much for listening to episode 5 recorded on a day in America when the dysfunction of this country has been laid bare for all of us to see. On a day like this, many people have many choices. I cannot tell you what you will do from the events of today or the gradual unfolding of what is coming in this country in this future. But I will tell you that I choose in this great darkness to be a light. I choose to find the people lost and alone in the darkness and to offer them a hand. That is not a form of weakness, it is a form of strength. Community is the essence of what we're trying to do here on Ignite. And a day like today, it just reminds us how alone fear makes us feel. And it can be quite terrifying. The problem that we have in this country right now is that authoritarianism is growing like a monster. The monster thrives in darkness. And unfortunately, what many of the leaders in our country have done to try to hide from the monster is they've tried to, to turn off the light, thinking that the monster won't see them. But the monster thrives and grows in darkness. It's only when you shine a light that you see how small the monster actually is. So I can't tell you what choice you will make after this day, which will no doubt be a historic day in history, one day before 9/11, another historic day in American history. I can't tell you what to do or who to be, but I am choosing to be a light. And I hope you'll join me.